Yeah, that we never stop communicating. Where we sit, how we come into a room, the level of eye contact we make, how we relate to each other, what we say. We are always communicating. What we don't say. It's like, it is very sad when we hear about either a young person or an older person either having attempted to take their lives or to take their lives. Or I work with many young people over the years who self-harm. And when they come to me, I say to them, show me the cuts. Because your cuts communicate so much to me. And tell me how have you been cut. And what are you cut up about? Because I'd love to hear it. Because they're communicating, their cut communicates. Or the person that takes an overdose, what have they had an overdose of? What is it that they can't swallow anymore, right, that they need to talk about? So, Freud puts it very well, that he says, what a distressing contrast there is between the radiant mind of the child and the feeble mentality of the average adult. I mean, if you look at the toddler, there was somebody here with a baby this morning, and I had some lovely contact, and the baby was all excited and all alive, right? And the mother was saying to me, she just loves seeing a new face. Of course she does, because she has a sense that there's so much to get to know, and that life is an adventure. How many people have that sense of adventure? That that no matter how long we live, that we are only touching the edge of what life is all about, the whole mystery of life. And if you watch the toddler, the toddler, loves to learn, is eager to learn, is so energetic, right? No lack of energy, is spontaneous, is expressive, expresses all the feelings, by the way. And so so many young men don't express their feelings. And then is it receptive to affection and to warmth and that lovely interaction with that baby this morning. And then is fearless. And is a daredevil. And is a risk taker. How many of those qualities do you still have? Because if you don't, then the child will lose them as well. Not because you want them to, but we can only do what we know. We can't do what we don't know. And so somehow, if that child's expressiveness and receptivity and eagerness to learn and love of learning and energy and fearlessness and daredevil behavior is interrupted, the child very cleverly, wisely will now bury the part of her that's not responded to. Because it's too dangerous to keep putting it out, because if I keep putting it out, I get hurt, or I'll be shouted at, or I'll be ignored, and so I cleverly begin to put away the part of me that is not received. And I remember when the parent or a teacher or other adult, by the way, it's not only parents who affect children's lives, every adult has an influence in the child's life. Even that little interaction I had with that baby this morning, it was a lovely interaction. But if I'd come up and just ignored her, I've no doubt I would have affected her. That her little eagerness, right, wouldn't, if I didn't respond to it. It takes the world to raise a child, not just parents. Every adult has an influence on a child's life. And the very sad thing is that, no matter, we all have stories here. Every one of us has a story here. And who do you tell your story to? Or who listens to your story? Or who's interested in your story? Or who has the patience to really hear your story and understand and have compassion for your story? Where do you find a person to do that with? Because if you don't, you keep it buried. And what is buried will find a way of expressing itself. Either through depression, either through aggression, either through manipulation or control. It'll find a way to express itself. But it will not express itself directly and clearly, because that would be too dangerous. Because I'm not being heard. When we've been looking over the last number of months, the ISIS people who are doing all these appalling killings, They come from the poorest possible places in their country. They are the most neglected young men in their country. They have had no families, they've had no solid rearing. They are invisible to themselves. And one of the great ways of becoming visible in this world is to now be known all over the world as the one who knocks everything that's good about the world. And you can see they're ruining the major cities in the world, like Petra and other cities. But they are crying out for help. I was very pleased there recently with a judge. There was a man sent for public disorder, drunkenness, and he had a long list of offences. And he expected that this time that he would be put in prison. And the judge was looking at the long list of offences, and he looked at the guard that had prosecuted the man, right, or arrested the man. And he said, "Guard, do you realise that this man has been crying out for help for years? And do you think my putting him into prison is going to help him in any way? And what I'm going to do is arrange for this man to go to a residential unit and get the help that he's been crying out for years." Oh my God, what wisdom, what understanding. Remember, none of us will get drunk unless we are hurt. When you really occupy, like the toddler, when you really occupy your person and your individuality, you won't hurt yourself and you won't hurt another either. But when you've been deeply hurt yourself, unwittingly and unconsciously, you will act out your hurt in one way or another. And you see, when we hear about somebody killing themselves or hurting themselves, yeah, our heart goes out to them. I hope it does. Mine does. And when I hear about somebody killing another, my heart goes out to them as well. Because I know if somebody kills another person, they're dead inside of themselves. They are dead to themselves. Because I can assure you, if they were alive to themselves, they wouldn't hurt another person. But you see, does your heart go out to the person that kills another? And it needs to. Because otherwise, they'll keep getting rejected, they'll keep being prosecuted, they'll keep being shot, and the more you try to, if you don't understand where they're coming from, and the more you attack them back, the more they will keep increasing. And then the person that self-harms himself, well, somehow our heart goes out to them, doesn't it? And you wonder why. Why does our heart go out to the person that hurts themselves or attempts to take their life, compared to those who hurt another? Because actually it's coming from the same place. Because the person who hurts themselves or cuts themselves is cut off from themselves. They are dead to themselves. And there's a story. I know it's interesting that, when we talk about somebody, killing another or hurting themselves or harming themselves, do you realize that in every day that the sharp word can cut a person to pieces? And the frequency of that is very important. I'd run some courses in Dublin, and on Thursday, when I arrived in Dublin, in Wicklow, one of the people doing the course, a young mother, professional woman, she was there waiting for me. And so no sooner I was out of the car, and she came over to me, ran over, and she said, "Oh, listen, I don't know whether I should stay or not, right? There was a phone call from the school. My 11-year-old daughter is very upset, and she's crying." And I was saying, "What's happening?" Well, she said some 8 to 9-year-old child put something up on YouTube, "gay bitch," right? And she's so upset. What'll I do? What'll you do? What would you do? Do you think the course is more important than your daughter? You go to your daughter, you comfort her, you listen to her, you let her express her hurt and champion her. And also your heart needs to go out to the 8-year-old who wrote that. Because where did that come from? Where did that 8-year-old, what sad, dark place did that little 8-year-old coming from that he would write that about another child? Can you hold both? Because you see, your heart will tend to go out to the child, won't it, that was called a gay bitch. But does your heart go to the child that actually called this other child a gay bitch? Otherwise, we'll keep alienating this group. And we'll keep trying to save this group. What I want to do is empower this girl. It's good to champion her, it's good to comfort her, but also to empower her and help her to see that this boy is communicating something that's very sad about himself. And what he's saying is not about her at all, it's about himself. He's communicating something about some way that he is being named or labelled. And so the sharp word. It's like there was a woman I'm working with. She attempted suicide a number of times. She's separated now. But she remembers when she was 17 years of age. And she was going to London to do some work. And she was at the airport and her mother came with her. And she turned to the mother and said, I'm really going to miss you. And the mother said, I won't miss you. You see, the girl obviously was gutted. That sharpness, right, cut her very deeply. And a number of years later, she hit a very deep depression. Now, her father was very violent, addicted to alcohol. Mother, extremely passive, put up with all the violence over the years. Now, you understand that passivity is as much not being there for yourself and your child as aggression is. You know, the sharp word, right? Like I said, I won't miss you. I remember that myself, lots of sharp words. But I remember a particular teacher. It's amazing after all these years that I still remember it. When I went into 6th class in primary school, first hour in, met the teacher. I remember his name, Mr. O'Sullivan, the one-eyed man, right? And I used to normally get first in class. And he turned to me and he said, you won't get first in my class. Now, why would he say that? Where was that coming from? Now, you see, if I had said to him, Mr. O'Sullivan, I'm a bit curious, right? How is it that you're saying that to me? You know, is it somehow you never got first yourself? Is that what's going on for you? But you're certainly putting something over onto me that doesn't belong to me. If I had said that, what would have happened? I wouldn't be standing here today now, would I? Right. And you understand how frightening it is for a child to speak the truth? And how we have to bury it and repress it and hide it away? But isn't it amazing, after all these years, I still remember it. And I also remember another teacher in the same school. I could remember his name, Brother Dominic Duffy. And things were, difficult in my childhood for all sorts of reasons. And I remember I was going out the gate of the school. It was a wet, dark kind of day. He came up behind me and he said, Tony, things must be tough for you. That's what he said. But I never forgot it. And the kind word can have such an effect. And the sharp word can have such an effect. One cuts us, the other inspires us. And which have you most heard? And not just the sharp word, right? The tone of voice. Oh my God, tone of voice. Tone of voice accounts for most human misery, doesn't it? Because your tone can be bitter, it can be threatening, it can be aggressive, it can be cynical, it can be sarcastic, it can be also nice and quiet and don't upset me. And the tone is not solid, it's not strong, it's not holding of the person themselves or of the person they're talking with. Tone of voice accounts for most human misery. And do you notice your tone when you're speaking with anybody? Not just a child, but any human being. Because every human being deserves my belief in them, my love, my understanding, my compassion, my care, my patience, my kindness. There's no greater wisdom than human kindness. And I think to understand, right, what happens to people, when they struggle to hold their lives, right, you need to put into your own story. And I remember myself that most people here would know that I was in a monastery for 7 years, and 1 month from ordination, I had stopped believing in everything Catholic. I was now a deacon. I was up there participating in Mass, and I didn't believe in any of it. And what was I going to do? It was not easy, I can assure you, to leave the monastery in the early 70s. It was not even easy at all. Right? And I remember writing a letter home saying, "Dear Mum and Dad, I know this is going to come quite as a shock to you, but there are certain teachings of the church I have reservations about." I remember the line so well. And, given those reservations, it would be hypocritical of me to go forward for the priesthood. Now, my mother wrote back in her crippled hand, "If you come out, I'll die." Well, I mean, how many people have been in relationships where people will threaten you, "If you leave me, I'll harm myself or I'll hurt myself"? How many people have experienced that? I bet there are many people here. And my mother didn't do that consciously. Can you imagine how it was for them? And well, I'll finish the story and then you'll see it. And then my father wrote back in a very aggressive hand, "If you come out, I'll never talk to you again." Do you think I was a happy camper now? Do you think that that my life went up or down? It went very much down, I can assure you. And I had plan B. Plan B was, what I'll do, I'll go ahead with the ordination. I'll go to the local church and I'd say the mass. All the locals were the community. I was only 1 month from ordination. I had the vestments, I had the chalice, and I'll go there. I'll say mass there, bless the whole community, and then volunteer to go out. This order had a house out in South America, and when I get to South America, I will disappear. It was a good plan, wasn't it? Come on, give me credit. But you see, ask the question: how often do you disappear? How often do you disappear? Because you can disappear right in this room. You can disappear when you're with your partner who's getting aggressive. I can disappear, when you're asked to do something, you just feel like, shrinking back and disappearing, that a hole would open up and swallow you up. You can disappear at work. You can disappear in your marriage. You can disappear as a parent. Because, well, I'm going to come to that. One of the great disappearances is passivity, by the way. Because when I'm not there for myself, how can I be there for my child? I cannot, right? And so you take, the sharp word. Oh, let me finish the story. I had a dream. Dreams have a huge influence in my life. And the dream because I was bringing up blood from my lungs that time. And if you're not breathing your own life, if you're not taking action for yourself, very often, at a very deep level, your body would speak for you. And when you bring up blood from your lungs, you're not breathing your own life, right? You're restricted in some way. Now, I wasn't a psychologist at that time. I didn't see it that way, I can assure you. But now I know. But anyway, the dream was very clear to me. Tony, if you go down the road again, once again, of pleasing other people and not living your own life, you are in great danger. So the following morning, we used to get up perhaps 5 in the morning, and I went down to listen to the title, Father Superior. Where did I get the titles from? Father Superior, Father Inferior. I mean, hierarchy is not a good system because it means people are squashed. The same in workplaces. I work in a lot of work in Turkey, and some of the universities I work there, they have a horizontal way of doing management. Nobody sits on another. You have different responsibilities, but nobody has power over another. Now, my older brother came up to collect me. Now, what was I going to do? I'm 25 years of age. They gave me £40 at the time from the the monastery. Black suit. This is not it. Right? And I have no career. What am I going to do? So I go home. My brother brings me home. Do you think the yellow flags were out? No, there was nothing. And then nobody spoke. You know the silent treatment? You know when you engage in silent treatment, come on, we all sulk. I remember working with one couple who hadn't spoken to each other for 15 years. I called it a long sulk, right? And there was a very deep story why they didn't do it, right? Which I haven't time to go into now. But silence is such a violence. Because you're cut off from yourself when you're silent, but you're also cut off from the other. Is that very clear? That passivity means I'm not there for myself. I'm cut off from myself. But I'm also now cut off from championing my child, or my partner, or my colleague at work, or my friend. And it was interesting, I was doing a retreat here last weekend. Kerry is trying to take me over, I think, but the Cork team now are out for me as well, so be wary this year. But there was a lady there who's written a very good book on bullying. Just point I was going to make about that. Yes, one of the very important things about her book, she talks about the bystanders. Remember, if you've got two people bullying another, how many bystanders have you got? How many? You could have 3 or 4 or 10, couldn't you? And in the workplace, if you see a manager, bullying an employee, how many bystanders have you got? How many would stand up and say, I'm uncomfortable with this? Very few, if any. And can you understand that when we're passive, when we bystand, we are not there for ourselves? Because I can assure you where you'd be very clear, I'm really uncomfortable with what's happening here, and I don't think any colleague of mine deserves to be responded to in that way. And I'm asking you to reflect, how is it that you need to communicate in that way? Because there's something in you that's leading you to do that. But how many of us will say that? Not many. And you see, we need to see the violence of silence, the violence of passivity. Because we're very quick to see bullying, but we're very slow to see passivity. And which is more common, by the way. Passivity is huge, right? It is one of our great defenses. It's so clever, passivity. Because if I'm passive, if I withdraw, right, if I keep my mouth shut, how do I protect myself? So I'm not taking any risk, am I? And therefore, who can cut me down now? Who can give the sharp word? And so I very cleverly have hidden away. And how am I going to come out of hiding? And you can only come out of hiding when you discover somebody in your life who supports you, who listens, who encourages you, who believes in you, who loves you. Because if there's a relationship that sends you into hiding, it is a relationship of a very different nature that helps you to come out of hiding. Because I can assure you, if you were held unconditionally in all the ways I've spoke about there, you would never need to go into hiding. You wouldn't have to go off to South America like I was planning to hide. So I go home and nobody speaks. The silent treatment. In many ways, it wasn't the best of weapons, really. Because after 7 years of silence, I was kind of used to silence, right? But nonetheless, all jokes aside, it was very painful. And here I was deeply depressed. I didn't know what I was going to do with my life. I had no money. All I had was a black suit and £40, and what was I going to do? And I came in the door of my home, and about after a week being there, nobody had spoken. And I overheard my mother saying to a neighbour, he's such an embarrassment to have around now. Can you imagine how deeply painful that was and how hurtful that was? And the following day, I'd sold to Chalice and I sold to Vestments, and I got on a train to Dublin. And, it was very suicidal. I really wanted to take my life. I wanted to end my life. There was no life. Because remember, we all want to belong. We want to belong to a family, we want to belong to a partner, we want to belong to a friend, to a community, to a workplace. But many of us are disappointed and hurt, either due to an over-belonging. When I do everything for you, you do understand, when you do everything for me, you're not there for yourself, and you're not there for me either. Is that clear? Because that is so common. An over-belonging means you don't belong to yourself, and the other person that you do everything for, you prevent them from being there for themselves. Unconsciously, unwittingly. And then the under-belonging, well, you better do what I tell you, and you better be top of the class, and you better do me proud, and don't let me down. And you hear the tone of the voice, and the dominating, and the controlling. And then the no-belonging. If you have parents who don't belong to themselves, who have no sense of their worth or their value or their presence, how can they be there for their child? You see, you can only do what you know. You can only give to another what you're giving to yourself. You can only see in another what you see in yourself. You can only believe in another in what you believe in yourself. If you don't see your own individuality and your own uniqueness and your presence and your power beyond measure and your amazing intelligence and creativity and your fearlessness, if you don't see them, how can you see them in the other? Because the other is you. You can only put out what's inside of you. So, I came to Dublin, and I said I was suicidal. I did think of committing suicide a number of times. I hated myself. I had no sense of myself. I used to always bring a book with me, no matter where I went, and this is what I would do. So, you see, what did that say? What did that communicate? I'm hiding, exactly. I'm hiding. And nobody asked me, how are you hiding, Tony? How is it that you're hiding? And that's sad. Nobody asked. So, it's a long story, but eventually I did get some help for myself, and then I did teaching degrees first, primary and secondary school, and then when I was age 30, I went back to university full-time for 8 years and studied psychology, and that really became the beginning of a long journey, and still goes on, I can assure you. But I certainly want people to know, I know exactly what it means to want to take my life. But I also know how we can discover our lives, because our lives are precious and they're unrepeatable. Can you imagine, you look around this room, that every person in this room has a unique presence, a non-repeatable presence. You just look around, and are you in awe when you meet another person because you're seeing something? We talk about unique masterpieces. There's nothing more unique than each human being. It is mind-boggling that every human being is unique and individual and unrepeatable. And do you see it? Or have you lost that sense of awe? Because if you don't see it in yourself, you can't see it in the other. Now, a woman came to me there sometime about a year or so ago, and she said to me, Tony, I don't love my children. 2 boys. Tell me, how many people would you say that to? Or would you say to anybody? How many people would you say to? Because what do you think they might say if you did say it? How could you say something like that? And it's like a teenager girl that I was working with there last week in Dublin as well. And she is a friend at St. Patrick's Hospital, psychiatric hospital in Dublin. She's this young person I'm seeing is age 20, struggling herself. But her friend has attempted suicide. And she keeps talking about suicide. And she's been medicated. And the only person she talked to is her friend. And that's very interesting, because we know that when young people or older people feel suicidal or are self-harming, the most likely person to talk to is some friend, not family, not professionals. 85% of teenagers didn't speak to anybody before they took their lives. 85%. And how is that? How is it that, young people wouldn't see that, of course, I want to hear what's happening for you. And I am here for you, right? I want to support you to be able to tell me what your needs are and what your hurts and what your pains are. How is it they don't get that message from us? But you see, they can only get it from us if we can give it to ourselves. Do we listen to ourselves? Do we hold ourselves? Do we allow all the feelings that we have to come up for our attention? And then do we seek the help and support and the conversation that we may need to have with another in order to begin the journey from what I call dependence to independence, from surviving to thriving, from fear to fearlessness, from unconsciousness to consciousness. Wonderful journey. Stanislavski, a great Russian poet, puts it so well. The longest and most exciting journey is the journey inwards. But you see, where do we get the opportunity? I mean, you look at it, most of us here, right? Where did we get the opportunity as adults to do that journey inwards? Whether we're parents, or whether we're teachers, whether we're doctors, whether we're psychologists, social workers, whether we're managers or leaders or politicians, right? Where is the requirement to examine your life? A life examined is a life lived, and a life unexamined is a life not lived. And the great psychoanalyst Carl Jung says, possibly the greatest psychic effect on children is the life that adults have not lived. Not just parents, but adults. You know, aunts and uncles had a huge influence on my life. Not just my parents, teachers had a huge influence on my life. And this comes back to what I was saying earlier, it takes the world to raise a child, but even more importantly, the future of society never lies with children. The future of society always lies with adults, because children have to survive us. And in surviving us, if we're hidden away, or if we're aggressive and we're controlling, we're dominating, then they have to survive it, and they go into hiding, because we're already in hiding. Because I can assure you, if you're really present to yourself, you're really visible to yourself, you will need to be aggressive, not passive. You'll be kind, caring, compassionate, understanding, very bounded, very clear boundaries, fair and just, open and definite. And how many of us can claim to be there? But we deserve to get there, and we deserve to be given the opportunities to get there. And a woman, when she said to me, I don't love my children, I said to her, you know, I feel so touched and I feel so privileged that you could say that to me. Because I don't know who else you would say that to. And I said to her, tell me, how do you feel about yourself? I hate myself. And I said, of course, it's not your children you don't love, it's yourself. And then she goes in and we go into her story. And very fascinating. Some people will know this story, but it's good. I had met her son about a year before, just for half an hour, and we chatted, and we made a lovely connection. And when he was leaving, please don't say something that you don't feel. Please be genuine, be authentic, be real. Don't pretend, because children pick us up so quickly when we pretend. They can read you like a book. Do you ever watch babies? Oh God, they read you so well. They really study your face, don't they? Because they pick up, their first language is body language. So when he was leaving, I said, I really loved my time with you. And I'm really going to miss you. And which was genuine. And for months afterwards, he would say to his mother, Tony said he'd miss me. Now I see this child was communicating what? Was he talking about Tony? No, he was not. What was he talking about? Everybody else was missing him. Why was there only Tony would have him in his head? Mother and father had parted. Father, never followed through in his commitments, or very rarely did. Would promise the child to be there, wouldn't turn up. Can you imagine how devastating that is for a child? And how many of us will make our work more important than our child, or more importantly than ourselves? You know that many men are dedicated, spelled D-E-A-D, to their work. But you see, if you're dedicated to your work, you're dead to yourself, but you're also dead to your marriage, and you're dead to your child. And you're totally unconscious of it. And is there any kind person that brings it to your attention and says, do you see what's happening for you? I'm really concerned about, hear the I message, I'm really concerned what's happening for you. Because somehow you put your work ahead of yourself, your child, your marriage. How is that? How did that come about? And you'll always get the story. That's how I got seen as a child. I remember that with a man who came to me, and he was work addicted. I called him my haymaker, but he married a holiday maker. You tend to marry the opposite of yourself, by the way. And someday we'll do a seminar on that, right? How opposites attract. She'd go off on sun holidays 2 or 3 times a year. He'd never go on holiday because the place would fall apart if he wasn't there, right? I'm sure you all know people like that. Like, look at the cleverness of it. The job cannot do without me. That's That's the projection. Who can't do without a job? Who can't do without a job? I can't do without a job, because without a job I'd have no visibility. And the one way I got seen by a father or mother or a teacher or whoever was by being the hard worker. And so this man, he'd come to me, they had one child, his wife had gone off, she had met her lover on one of the sun holidays, she had gone off with him, right? And here he was in front of me, and he said to me, my life is over, right? I have nothing now. And I said, no, this is the first day of your life. This is the first day of your life, right? Because you haven't been living your life up to now. And I said, I've no doubt when we go into your story, we will discover how was it that work dominated your life and you were not in relationship with yourself and you were not in relationship with your wife or your child. This can be the first day of your life. And interestingly, as we went into his story, he remembered one very clear event, a bit like some of the stories I've been telling you about myself. He remembers when he was about 6 years of age, up in the tractor with his dad. You ever see kids up in the tractor? And their little chests are swelled out, and they're so proud as punch to be up in the tractor with their dads. And they're going by, I'm sure it was down in Kerry actually, but they were going by so many golf courses in Kerry. They were going by a golf course, and the father starts giving out. Now listen to the tone of it. There was a crowd of bloody wasters in there, wasting good land and good money. And the little kid is listening. And what does he never want his father to say to him? You're a waster. Oh my God. And he's now lived the next 34, he was about 42 then, the next 36 years, work, never wanting to be called a waster. And whose life was wasted? Yes. Isn't that sad? But it did turn around, and it did become the first day of his life. And that's important, right? You know, when we can catch people on the edge of their lives and help to turn it around, that how they've been up to now is how they've needed to be in order to survive. They have not been wrong. They have not been bad. They have not been mentally ill. They have very cleverly found a way to survive. The most important people in their lives who put something on them and who themselves. Isn't it so sad? Because you look at that dad up in the tractor with his little 6-year-old. Who was listening to him? Who saw that he was on the edge of life? Who saw that he had no life for himself? And then where was mum there? Why wasn't mum championing the child and making sure the child saw that the most important thing in your life is your presence and not what you do? And was mum's passivity very profound there? My guess is yes. But nobody is to blame. Remember, when we hide away as children, we do it unconsciously. I mean, it's like that child I was telling you about that when he said, Tony will miss me. About 6 months ago, his mother rang me and said, he's developed some obsessive-compulsive disorders. Now, I call them obsessive-compulsive creations, by the way. They're not disorders, right? There's always a meaning to them. And I said, okay, what are they? She said, well, he's quite convinced now that adults have germs. And if I sit in a chair where an adult is sat, I will get a germ, right? So, and the other obsessive-compulsive behavior was adult smell. Oh my God, how clever, because this child, his mother, remember, has said, I don't love my children. And his father keeps not turning up. And so what has happened to him with the most important adults in his life? He has felt rejected, he has felt let down. And so what's the cleverness of his germs now? Keep away. Oh my God, how clever of him. And you want to put a label on him and you want to medicate this child rather than seeing how clever this. Because once I keep away, I won't get hurt. And remember, the word infected and affected are very close, aren't they? Because he doesn't want to be infected with more rejection. He doesn't want to be affected. And the smell is great, and he won't even look in their direction. Yeah. And so when he comes to see me, and we're chatting, and I say to him what's been happening, and he tells me he's so sad and very upset, and that here we are. He has found somebody he can talk with, express his feelings. Could he express his feelings to his mum? No. There was Dad? No, there was nobody. And so he tells me his feelings. And I then say to him, and I believe that you have developed these obsessive behaviors. About germs, yeah. And I said, about smell as well, yeah. And I then say to him, oh my God, I'm so impressed. I'm so impressed, right? How you managed to reduce hurt for yourself. You're a clever boy, right? Tell me now, I said, oh, I'm an adult. Do you think that you might get germs off me? Or that I smell? Oh, no. He's only 8, by the way. Oh, no. I know you love me. Children know. They know when we love them. I know you love me. Can you imagine? And we think, please don't think age has anything to do with intelligence and creativity. Intelligence and creativity is part of our nature. It's there from the moment of conception. People confuse knowledge with intelligence. This child is so creative and intelligent. He is surviving a very difficult situation. Anyway, his mum has done a lot of good work. Very interestingly, though, that when he sit down on a sofa with his mum, they'd always sit apart, right? But he has sensed the change in his mum, right? I just want to play a bit of footsie there with you. Okay, don't worry, this won't go too far. And when he sits with his mum, what he'll do now, he'll put his foot over, about 6 months ago, he'd put his foot over and he'd start touching her leg. What is he doing? He's making a little contact. He's putting his toe in the water, isn't he? He's not going to suddenly risk it, is he? No, of course he's not. He does it bit by bit. But anyway, Mum has done a lot of good work, and she woke up there recently as well, and she had this most overwhelming sense of love for her children. And she wanted to get up there in the middle of the night and tell them how much she loved them, right? And she was telling the kids about it the following morning, and my kids said, why didn't you wake me up? Why didn't you wake me up, right? But of course, what she was feeling was overwhelming love for herself first, and then for her children. Now she can give both boys great hugs, yeah? But she said to my little boy recently, how do you feel now? How do you feel now when I hug you? And listen to it. I feel you don't hate me anymore. You see, you're not going to trust it. If you've had 8 years of not being loved, you're not going to suddenly trust being loved. But it's a shift. I feel you don't hate me anymore. And that's why, when young people or older people are really struggling with their presence, with their worth, with their value, with their goodness, with their presence, right? Patience is so important. It is so important. Because I can assure you they will move at the pace that they feel safe to move at. They will not move at your pace. They have to move at their own pace. There's nothing, it's interesting, in all the therapy books, you never get the quality of patience being written about as being the most important aspect of doing any support or help work with another human being. Patience. How are we doing? Oh my God. I have lots more to talk about, but we won't see. Just wanted to see, yes. Now, yeah, there was a 17-year-old. Hi there. You're waving at me, are you? I hope, Stevie Smith's lovely. Actually, there's an article. Remember those articles I was talking to you about that you can access on my webpage, right? There's one article there that says, I'm not waving, I'm drowning. I thought I wasn't sure back there. That was from that wonderful poet, Stevie Smith, who actually took her own life. And that lovely line that she wrote in one of her poems, I'm not waving, I'm drowning. And I can assure you, when people are depressed and anxious and self-harming and withdrawn and silent, uncertain, highly anxious, they are waving, but they're also drowning. They're waving their flags of distress. They're drowning. And unless some person, throws out a life buoy or a life raft, and helps them to begin to get on board their own life, they will continue to drown. I'm not waving, I'm drowning. But a 17-year-old, taught a secondary school teacher, very violent man, roars all the time, shouts all the time. A child labelled autistic in the family as well. There are 3 boys, all very troubled. My 17-year-old very recently made very strong decisions about deciding to go to live with his grandparents rather than live with his parents, changed his school, dropped seeing his peers because they were all into drugs and alcohol. What he said to me, I do not want to turn out like my father. I said, wonderful, wonderful, right? How wise of you. But then recently he said to me, I want to end my life. And I said to him, and I want to help you to do it. Because the life you've had is absolutely miserable. You see, I don't panic. Why would I panic? He's absolutely right. He needs to end his present life. He needs to end all the pain and all the feelings of rejection. And he feels nothing for himself. Mother, extremely passive here. And when I say to him, but you're my hero. Do you understand that when we survive very difficult situations, we are both heroes and heroines? And you're my hero. You survived Auschwitz, I said. And you have found a way, to make strong decisions for yourself. But, even the way that you managed to, protect yourself from all the hurts in the family. And how you now removed yourself from your peers who were into drugs and alcohol and found a better school for yourself. You're my hero. And he says to me, I don't feel any of that yet. And I said, I totally understand that. Because why would you suddenly trust me? But I can assure you that's how I see you. And when he came first to me, he wouldn't make any eye contact. He would just grunt at me. And then he would do his father. He'd say, what in the fuck can you do for me? And I'd say, whatever you let me know, I will support you in what you need to do. But I can understand exactly. Now he comes to me, gives me this big hug. But we're still on a thin line. But I want you to hear that when somebody says, I want to end my life, if you go off panicking, you're not holding where they are. If you say to them, tell me about the life that you want to end. Because it makes total sense. If you're feeling sad and depressed and whatever, that's the life you want to end. But there's a precious life here, though. And I see it. And I want to help you to begin to live this life. Yeah. And there was another one that we just... Yeah. There's another man, he's actually a colleague. And he comes to me, for some work to do with other... the work that he does with other clients. But he's suffered himself a lot. And on one of the days he came to see me, he said, Tony, I really feel I want to kill myself. And I said to him, tell me, what is the self? Or who is the self you want to kill? Now, it was amazing how quickly it came out. My bastard self. He was orphaned. He was put into Beswer as an abandoned child. The nuns, he's in his 50s now, the nuns refer to him as the bastard child. Can you imagine how that cut deeply into his soul? And how 50 years later it is still present with him? But at least, now what has he done? He's expressed it. He hasn't expressed that to anybody in the whole 50 years. Now he's expressed it. And so I can say to him, and you and I are going to work together to bring forward your true self. Because your bastard self belonged, sadly, to how those nuns saw you. Sadly, they did not see your amazing presence and your goodness and your worth and your individuality. And if they didn't, they were not seeing their own. And that bastard self label belongs to them. It doesn't belong to you. So, you understand, we offer hope. When we hold, when we don't panic, when we listen. Oh, that word listen. Listen is an anagram for silent. Do you realize that? S-I-L-E-N-T is L-I-S-T-N. And do you listen in silence? Be silent when somebody is speaking with you. So, when we talk about awareness around suicide and prevention of suicide, and prevention means to stop the coming of. That's what the word prevention means. And the only way we can stop the coming of self-harming or suicide is through relationship. But it is not what happens between people is the issue, it is what happens within. And I can only create a relationship with you to the extent that I have a relationship with myself. Is that very clear? I mean, John O'Donoghue puts it so well, right, that belong first in your own interiority. And Christ said it so well. You love God with all your heart and you love your neighbour. Best kept secret in the Catholic Church, that we should love ourselves. We were told it was selfish to love ourselves. Remember, I spent 7 years in a monastery. This is the most unselfish thing you can do, is to love yourself. There's nothing more unselfish, because you don't burden or put your life over onto another when you love yourself. And when you love yourself, you see the lovability of the other immediately. Christ was spot on. And Buddha puts it so well. You can travel the entire universe and not find anybody more worthy of love than yourself. And then Socrates, you go back to the philosophers, know yourself. And you go back to Chinese sages, to know self is wise, to know another is learned. And our most important responsibility is to find the support, because it's difficult to find it, to find the support, to find the relationship that offers you the opportunity to get to know yourself, to bring to consciousness, to bring out of hiding what has been hidden away for many years. There's nothing more powerful than I can bring to you than seeing you for yourself. But I can only do that when I see myself for myself. And we have the opportunity to do, I've had the most amazing conversations, because I travel all over the world on planes, trains and automobiles. And I was telling this story, there's a restaurant we go to, a place called Wilderness in South Africa. And I always remember the name of the waiter or waitress, even though it might be a year or so later when I come back. Because I want to make sure that when somebody serves me, there's an individual contact, a person-to-person contact, a human-to-human contact. Do you do that? Are you conscious of that? And so when I went back into the restaurant, last October, December, and when I went into the restaurant, this black waiter came out, and I said, "Hi, Joseph, it's good to see you again." And you could see he was so surprised. And we were there 3 evenings, every second night. It's a very good restaurant. And and he introduced us to another waitress, Sandra was her name. And she was new. And Joseph served us the first night, and Sandra served us the other 2 nights. But when Joseph would pass by the table, I'd say hello, or how are things? Or we'd make contact. Remember, you don't have to speak. You can make contact with the eyes. You can make contact with a lovely look, right? You can make contact with just a gesture. It doesn't have to be words. And when we were leaving the last night, I paid the bill and everything like that. And Joseph came over to the table and he said, "Do you mind if I say something?" And I said, "No, I'd love to hear it, Joseph." Well, he said, "I've been working here 8 years. And you're the nicest people I've ever served." Can you imagine? I've been working someplace for 8 years, and it takes 8 years to find a nice person. That's sad. That is so sad. And then Sandra came over just before we left, and she said, do you mind if I say something? I really enjoyed serving both of you, and I've really enjoyed the contact, and I'd love to have your email contact, because sometimes I travel, and I'd love to meet you again. Can you imagine? Short contact, that you have that kind of effect on another human being. And we have that possibility every time we meet another human being. Now, how am I on time? A little over. Can I just go through a few little, what's new, says you. Okay. Just to give you some idea, when I work with people who are suicidal, or I hope that's come across. They never want to end their lives. What they want to end is the pain. Is that clear? And you get some idea there. Most for deliberate self-harm. I wanted to get relief from a terrible state of mind. I wanted to show how desperate I was feeling. I wanted to punish myself. I wanted to find out whether someone really loved me. That's a very common one. I wanted to frighten someone into seeing me right. I wanted to get some attention because I'm getting no attention. And I wanted to get my own back on someone because I've been hurt so badly. Nobody reported wanting to die as the only motive, I can assure you. Now, one of the things I have to, and I understand why, you know, that it seems that in the short term it takes a lot to work with people who are in very deep depression, high anxiety and in conflict. In the long term, actually, it is hugely cost effective, but it shouldn't be a cost issue anyway. It is well-being that should be the priority. But the medicalization of suicide has prevented a realistic understanding of what leads individuals to end their precious lives. There's no doubt about that. To suggest that suicide is due to mental illness only further alienates the person who is suicidal from self and others. And it's like that young woman I was telling you in St. Patrick's Hospital. The only person she feels listening to her is a friend. She said the medics are not listening to her. Her parents are saying, don't be talking like that. Don't be saying things like that. Rather than saying, how is it that you're saying that? The how question is a great question. How is it? Tell me about what you're feeling. I'd love to hear about it. Sometimes, you know, it's such a taboo area, you know, that when somebody takes their lives, obviously, grieving needs to be done first. Remember, every grief is an act of love. Grief is an act of love. And we need to allow ourselves the time to grieve. But nonetheless, to honor the person who has taken their life, we need to really explore their story. There's an inner story about their disconnection from self, and there's the outer story of what happened in the relationships in their outside world. And you need to hold both worlds, the inside story and the outside story. And when you do, I've never yet not been able to understand why a young person takes their lives or attempts to take their lives. No blame, because remember, if you have a parent who's very passive, sure, of course she's not there for herself. And what happened to her as a child? Nobody's to blame. And it happens unconsciously, but unless we understand and unless we create a holding for each other, you will stay in hiding, and rightly so. Out of fear of appearing to be insensitive to those who are left behind, we are prevented from examining family and relationship conflicts that may well lie at the heart of suicidal behavior, the resolution of which could prevent enormous suffering. True sensitivity to the suffering involved requires we explore significant relationships. Okay, now, I think I talked enough about this. You know, just one quick one, that's very interesting. People who, you know, in terms of self-harming, you see, before self-harming, the only person to talk to was a friend, 38.2%. Only 7.8%, somebody in the family, 5.8%, a teacher, GP, 1.8%. Social worker, 3.3%, psychologists, psychiatrists, sadly, 4%. Telephone helpline, 4%. And you can see the other. That's sad, that people don't feel that they can come and talk with us. Yeah, I said that one. Now, so individuals in turmoil need to be seen for their unique presence and their unique interpersonal circumstances. Suicide is more about ending pain rather than dying. What is inside always comes out. And the cause of all human problems can always be traced to a non-conscious under-belonging or over-belonging or no belonging in significant relationships. A colleague in Ulster University, Professor McKenna, Hugh McKenna, he said, poor and unstable relationships can lead to emotional health problems, just as the development of stable interpersonal relationships can bring people back to mental health, and of course it can. And I see it every day for over 30 years as a therapist. People coming back to amazing well-being. Professionals who are involved in the understanding and the prevention of suicide need to possess a deep knowledge of their own stories and of the impact of relationships on people's interior and exterior lives. I hope I brought that point across now. And I hope I brought across that knowing my own story, I cannot sit with your story if I don't know my own story. What individuals need most in the midst of healthcare maze are a sensitive and caring healthcare professional willing to enter into interpersonal relationships that foster hope and prevent hopelessness. And I'm going to finish on one of my favorite poems. It says, please hear what I'm not saying. See, it's not what people say you need to focus on, it's what they don't say. It's not what people do you need to focus on, it's what they're not doing you need to focus on. Because that's the hidden world. Don't be fooled by me, don't be fooled by the face that I wear, for I wear a mask. I wear 1,000 masks that I'm afraid to take off, and none of them is the real me. So don't be fooled by me, I'm good at pretending. Remember my book? I give the impression that I'm cool and confident, but inside it's different. I'm not in command. I'm often confused, lonely, and desperately need someone to understand me. But I hide, and I don't want anyone to know. So when I'm talking, please listen carefully and try to hear what I'm not saying, what I'd like to say, but I can't. I'd like to be genuine, honest, and sincere, but I cannot without your help. My trust grows very slowly, so you will have to be patient with me. Each time you are kind, gentle, and encouraging, each time you try to understand, I'm given new hope, and I start believing myself in a new way. You let me see it's okay to be me. So I can take off the mask and be happy in your company. I can let you see the real me. Who am I, you may wonder? I am someone you know very well, for I am every man and woman you meet. Thank you.